Pete Hegseth was in a interview with Maria Bartiromo there. China has too much influence over the Panama Canal, and America is going to take it back. That's exactly what I was charged to do, and we're continuing to do so. Chinese influence cannot control our own backyard. So just kind of the raw details of that is Trump had a big ask, like you said, we're taking the canal back 3 months ago. And what this has evolved into is something I think a little more sustainable and an easy pill for Panama to swallow. We're going to get priority over the shipping. Fort Sherman, I think, is going to be open there. I believe that'll be an Army garrison. I don't know if it was there before, but it'll be reopened evidently. We're going to have an active military presence in Panama. We're going to be able to do whatever commerce we need to do in Panama and get priority. So I don't know where it stands with BlackRock or anything like that. Haven't gotten that far in this story, but just take a look at Hegseth's interview. It sounds like Panama has been caught with their pants down insofar as they have been letting China encroach on that canal and taking priority from the Pacific side of things. But in the Gulf side, Gulf of America side, we've kind of been elbowed out. We've kind of been shoved out over the years through our own fault, but we got to hold Panama accountable. They were in violation of that deal when Carter sold it to them. They had to be quote unquote good stewards, and good stewards of the canal does not mean you let a global superpower, communist superpower like China usurp the canal. I think when Trump got elected and he started talking about this, you guys might have remembered because they did have a talking point in a space about this. I guess the Panamanian government was frantically ripping down signage in the canal zone that was in Mandarin, prioritizing their overlords, China, but comply with the United States demands of the situation. So that's something to keep in mind. It's I would say we got 80% of what the big ask was, but just the fact with an increased military presence there is going to be quite helpful. It's going to be quite helpful. So this is factoring into negotiations with trade deals, isn't it? So hot off the wire, so to speak, hot off of the socials. Let me get that up. Next post. Where are we at? So there's another guy. You guys are familiar with this percent guy, but Kevin Hassett is the economic advisor. So he's got a pretty big role too, and he does a lot of media, and I like him. So you want to check him out. So he's saying there's 10 deals on the table, and some very, very good and amazing offers that Hassett, Howard Lutnick, the Commerce Secretary, President Trump, the U.S. Trade Rep, who is Jameson Greer, kind of a younger guy. Anyway, they're making good progress. In regards to the market, friends, I think all you're going to need to do is see one or two countries make this deal public with the U.S. Taiwan's a huge one because of their monopoly on the semiconductor market. I think their tariff was 34%, and they didn't like it, obviously. So there's room to work out without focusing on these other countries. The biggest trade imbalance, of course, as you all know, is with China. Okay, 240 billion, 250 billion last year alone. Now, part of that is Sleepy Joe Biden, giving up the game to them. But believe it or not, that's a small fraction. It might have increased over his 4 years, but it's still always been very, very high. Because it's very, very hard to decouple from China. We're going to find that out the hard way, but none of us are going to be complaining because it's necessary, right? Right? We're all going to be happy warriors in this thing. So, as much as I want to talk about like a Taiwan, a Vietnam, an EU, etc. I really think even South Korea and Japan, I really think the focus, guys, should be more so on China, at least because that's going to be the monster. That's going to be the tiger that's got to be tamed. That's going to be quite a lot, big heavy lift for the administration. But I would say, guys, you forget, and if you're listening to this on the recording, let me know if you remember this in a DM, and if you have any relevant video or articles I want to refresh my memory with. Right, we had kind of a phase one deal in place with China in the first administration, where they were already actively paying tariffs, and what killed it was COVID, January 15th, 2020. Excuse me, what happened then? The first Chinese national landed in, I still can't remember if it was Seattle or Portland, Oregon, at the commercial airport, COVID positive from Shanghai. So and the rest is history. We all know what happened from there. We had this tentative trade deal in place with China, and granted, Biden didn't pursue it, obviously, and they had the pandemic as an excuse. Well, that's ancient history now. So China has not honored that original trade deal, which didn't expire. They agreed to all the parameters begrudgingly, but they never participated. So that's a problem, guys. That's a big, big problem. We have a lot of leverage with China, and I think what you're hearing in various spaces is China apologists and people that are, bloviating over free trade, which we don't have and haven't had, not in the last 30 or 40 years, not with China, not with, the European countries or any of these other big players in our market. I really think that should not be lost on any of you. We don't have free trade. I think when you are sitting in an economics class, or you're just given a paper that's got bullet points on what are the concepts of free trade, you look at that and you're like, huh, yeah, that's, if I was building a country, that's how I'd want to do business. Okay, I agree with that. But those bullet points, or that micro or macroeconomics class you're taking in college, what they're telling you, the textbook definition of free trade, is not what we've been engaged in. And the problem is you've got too many people that are claiming everything was just great, and free trade is fair trade, and free trade is the way to go to build a Western economy, to build a place with many markets. And that's not what we've been experiencing. You've heard these terms a lot over the last 2 weeks, like non-tariff barriers, VAT tax. Trump just simplifies it when he talks about it. They make it impossible for us to sell our products in their market. That's all. Put all that stuff, all those one-liners in one bucket, guys. If they don't have a tariff for us to sell our products, they make it virtually impossible, China in particular, India as well, to sell U.S. goods in their markets despite a huge demand. I've often used the example because it was something Trump tackled in his first administration. There is a huge demand in India for Harley-Davidson motorcycles. Now, it's not impossible to buy a Harley in India, but the government makes it so goddamn hard for and so unaffordable to it's basically impossible. They had something like a 50% tariff, and then of the 100% of Indians that wanted to ride Harleys, like 1% of them A could afford it and B actually got one. So while India will say, oh, we have a tariff, of course, United States, we have to get our piece of the pie, but it's not impossible. Any Indian citizen can buy a Harley. Well, I don't know, dude. It's when you make the cost of the bike 50% more than it needs to be. You only got rich asses in Bombay that are going to, Ravindra is not going to be riding a Harley, very impoverished nation, you see? So that's just one example. We face that example with Harleys in India I gave you. We face that 100-fold in China, and believe it or not, about 50-fold in Europe. Again, what does Trump talk about? You go to Berlin, you go to Paris, you go to London. You're not seeing people driving Chevys and Fords, are you? again, it's not, they don't put a ban or an embargo on American cars in their domestic market, but they make it impossible to get a hold of one. Think about it. A big open country, island nation like the UK, it's very spread out. You drive through the English countryside to go from like London to Liverpool or London to Birmingham. Uh, wouldn't you rather do that in a nice, efficient, like Ford Focus or even a Hyundai from South Korea? Good luck finding those type of cars there. I've been there, guys. It's all Euro all the time. You would say, oh, that makes sense. You go down to Tennessee. No, guys aren't driving Toyotas. They're driving Ford F-150s. Well, okay, fine. But you're not. Most of the sedan market is Japanese and European, right? Yeah, I get it. Tennessee's a red state, and you see guys with Silverados and F-150s, but look at all the sedans you see. They're all Toyota Corollas and the like. The aforementioned Hyundai, South Korea. How about, let's take Atlanta, Georgia. You guys, I've been to that. The fucking traffic in Atlanta is unbelievable. I've gone from like the airport to the hotel, and I'm telling you, people sit in traffic there. That's no joke. That's like the LA freeways out at rush hour. Atlanta traffic is no joke, guys. And you know what? You think it's a lot of conservative Southern people commuting into the city for work? I saw a lot of small cars, guys. I saw a lot of Toyota Priuses. When you're burning up a lot of gas and stop and go traffic and not driving efficiently, people go to the foreign cars. Americans are never going to stop buying Toyota, Mazda, Subaru, etc. And I'm fine with that. I think everybody should be able to drive what they want. Okay, so because I'm okay with everybody being able to drive what they want, even though I only buy GM, I'm okay with a reasonable tariff of the Japanese cars being sold here. If a woman wants to drive a Nissan Murano instead of a Jeep Cherokee, that's fine. She should have every right to do that. But what's in it for us by allowing 350 million Americans to buy whatever car they want? What's in it for us, I ask you guys? Well, we're not getting enough on our end of the deal, right? So we should, because we allow every mother in a minivan in this country to drive a Toyota Sienna if they want, don't you think that we'll never make as much money because there's less customers? Why can't mothers in South Korea buy fucking Chrysler minivans? We're going into that arrangement knowing the customer base is smaller, but we still want to allow Chrysler to have a fighting chance to sell product in the South Korean market. Allegedly one of our great allies. Well, they don't play that. It's near impossible. And there's a big cultural thing there. They're very nationalistic in Japan and South Korea. They don't want anybody, driving in foreign brands like Ford and Chevy and Chrysler. You see, guys, so we have to start somewhere, and it just hasn't been altogether very fair. You know what? You guys following? It's quite frustrating. I understand exactly where Trump's coming from on all of this. All right. So, but it's been very interesting. The anti-tariffism that you're experiencing in X Spaces, you hear the same thing. If iPhones are made here, they're going to cost $3,000. Okay, that's a big talking point, isn't it? That's a very popular talking point. Tim Cook's going to agree to open Apple factories in Arizona, Texas, Tennessee, and Arizona, Texas, North Carolina. I think Tennessee's the fourth state. Trust me, Trump put that as part of the deal. You want to open factories. You're not going to open them in fucking San Francisco. You're not going to open them in Bethesda, Maryland, in these, blue states, you're going to put them in red states with good governors, with business-friendly governors. So people, where there's more poor people in Tennessee than there are in Maryland. There's more poor people in the Memphis area than there is in Palo Alto. He's basically telling these tech guys, California doesn't count as the United States anymore because of the foreign influence in Silicon Valley. So, you're not going to get off this easily, Tim Cook. You want a $500 billion investment in the U.S. and start making tablets and phones here. I want my voting base to have a shot at those jobs. Like hillbilly white boys in Tennessee are going to get a chance to make what robots and slaves are making in China right now. And so the biggest pushback is, well, in the United States, you have to pay real wages and we have laws, and you can't have children working 18 hours a day in a factory. So a guy like me is going to have to spend $3,000. Guys, think about what you use your phone for. I'm just going to stick to Apple because I have an iPhone. Are you telling me that your phone is not worth $3,000? Think about what you do on it: your email, your banking, your stock trading, your text communication with your friends and family. I would, I don't know what this last phone was, 12 or 1300. It was new when I got it over 2 years ago. I don't even know what model it is. The X12, maybe, I don't know, 13. I would pay $5,000 for this, guys. You know why? Because it would pay for itself in like a month just with my job alone, the amount of correspondence I do. So it's amazing to me that you have libertarians, I always like to pick on them, and liberals on the same side, people with TDS, saying that they're very worried about your finance. Everybody's very, very worried. Never Trumpers are worried about, let Americans make their own decisions. If an iPhone is too much money, then they'll get a Nokia or something, whatever. But, don't worry about what I can afford. I don't give a shit if an iPhone is $3,000. I would pay for it. You know why? Because I need it, and what I make is a lot more than $3,000. So I guess what I'm saying is it's not going to put me under. All right. I would say your iPhone, guys, your cell phone is a very undervalued asset in your life. And I would say, because of the fact that no hypocrisy here, we don't make the rules, but I'm holding a phone that a robot or somebody who lives essentially as a slave, and hopefully not a child, made and didn't get paid fair wages for. I'm going to sleep better at night, guys, when I know people in America are making this phone, even if it triples in cost, rather. I'm going to sleep a lot better that somebody who is working as a Walmart greeter in Tennessee is going to get a chance to learn how to manufacture an iPhone. Probably the best invention since the light bulb in human history. And they're going to go home proud every night that they have a very respectable middle-class job. And they could say, yeah, I work in manufacturing technology. And they could have, be proud of what they do and that they're making phones that every American has, and it's American made. Steve Jobs, Apple founder, by the way, was American, guys. Apple is not a Chinese company. It's not a Japanese company. Okay? They were all these people: Steve Jobs, Steve Wozniak, Gates, the Antichrist. All of these people were American. Microsoft is an American company. Even the old companies that are out of business, Gateway, Compaq, all American. All computer innovation, for the most part, since the 1970s, has been American entrepreneurs. So why the fuck are these things being made in China now? We're just so used to it and so programmed, like good little monkeys, not to question anything. Well, I don't want to be a one-trick monkey, guys. It doesn't bother me that my trucks will cost more money. It doesn't bother. The two things that make me money the most, three things. One was free. That's my hands. I was born with those. Those were free. Just cost my mom a lot of labor pain, probably. All right. So the other two is my truck that I'm sitting in right now, which is probably a $60,000 truck, and the phone I'm holding in my right hand. I'm driving with my left. I'm a very talented guy. I can do a lot of things right and left-handed, FYI. So these are the things that make me money, and I have them, guys. And I'm fine with what they cost, and I'm okay with paying a little bit more. See, the idea is, guys, when you're in business, or forget being self-employed like me, if you have a job that you have to commute to, and your vehicle costs $2,000 or $3,000, I'm hoping that you are making more than that delta in the potential raise in cost of these items at your, I guess what I'm saying is I'm hoping 2 or 3 thousand bucks a year isn't going to put you under, because then you have a bigger problem than tariffs and the stuff, the things we use, and the fact that the things we use every day are going to cost more money. You've got some home budgetary problems. It should not put you under to pay a couple $1,000s more for an item you use every day. Guys, if this phone is $3,000, I would pay for it on one job. In fact, the job I finished up yesterday is probably going to be about 3,800. And you know how many visits I made to that house? 3. So and yesterday wasn't even an 8-hour day. So basically in 17 or 18 hours on this particular job, I made about, well, I got to do the billing. It's going to be like $3,800. Okay. That's going to pay. I don't need to finance an iPhone. If I go and upgrade this in a month, and the newest, what is it, X16 or whatever, it's $3,200. Maybe I'll just buy it cash, because in theory I'll have it from this one job alone. So I'm not really a hater on this whole thing, guys. I really, yes, it sucks that things cost money, but we're kind of at the end of this rodeo where the desire to just pay the cheapest price for stuff is not serving this country at all. In fact, it's hurting it. I'm not a cheap person. I that's why I don't call myself a conservative, because I'm not conservative with my money. I'm probably going to drop $1,000 on the stock market after I hang up with you. Okay. Because there's a few stocks I want to, buy 100 shares in or whatever. So people are very, very worried about what I'm spending lately. When I get into debates with people, well, these tariffs, your shit's going to cost more money, and that's just going to I don't even believe in this concept, but the whole thing, the tax is just going to get passed on to you. Okay, thank you. Thank you for caring. Here's the good news. I can afford it. Okay. You know why I can afford it? Because yesterday on a Sunday, which I hate to do, I was, installing a sink that took me like 3 hours. It was a fucking pain in the ass to get it undermount sink. It was a brutal job, right? So, and I'm thinking to myself, this customer is going to pay top dollar. I'm here on a Sunday, putting this sink in, having to do a bunch of modifications just to retrofit this sink they wanted. So I'm covered, guys. I'm not doing this for the practice. I'm 46 years old. This isn't a vanity project for me. I'm doing this for the money. Okay? Yes, I do agree. If you love what you do, you've never worked a day in your life. But I'm not doing that. I don't need the practice. I've had enough apprenticeship, enough practice. This is a money-making enterprise right now. I've got a lot of balls up in the air. And yeah, that's kind of where I'm at. I'm assuming many of you are at that point with your job or vocation right now. So everybody who's critical of Trump's tariffs, don't worry about the American people. We can deal with it. We can make decisions on what we want to buy and what we don't want to buy. and we all know what our household budgets are, et cetera. So, it's like, fuck off with that. Anyway, we'll get some comments in if you guys want. I highly recommend, though. I would, if any of you have any other information, there's one realtor I talked to on here, Stellar from Nevada. She's a realtor in the Vegas 702 area code, and I always like her stories on the market. She shares them from time to time in spaces. So, but if anybody knows any realtors that would read this article, you think they'd appreciate it, I would pass it on. It's the first thing in the nest. That is a perfect snapshot of the people that have been benefited, really the only people that benefited during the Biden years, Bidenomics, which is the 1%. They're the ones that were having a meltdown on Dave Portnoy, guys, is a 1%er. Okay, the guy's worth about $100 million. Okay, he's a 1%er. All the people you heard crying about their stock portfolio on Mario Space, they're all hedge fund guys and women. They're 1%ers. Their little fucking gravy train with Joe Biden having Jerome Powell cut interest rates when he shouldn't have been doing the last, and given $350 billion to Ukraine, and the American people were getting shit, okay, for 4 years. Guys like Mark Cuban. That's why I was very critical of Mark Cuban during the campaign supporting Kamala. That motherfucker, he had the balls to talk about. He benefited. A guy like Mark Cuban, I think he sold the Dallas Mavericks during Biden's term. Because for those of you who don't know, that's how he got his start, was buying the Dallas Mavericks in the 90s as a very young guy. I think he was the youngest owner in the league at that point. He sold it, but he still owns 5% of the team, and he still I don't know what his arrangement is, but he's not the majority owner anymore. He made a fortune. Do you know what an NBA franchise is worth? My Boston Celtics just got sold last month for like $7 billion, guys. Okay, there's only 30, some odd franchises. They are highly valued items. Mark Cuban is going to be fine. Dave Portnoy is going to be fine. All of these people whining in Mario's room, all these Euros that live in Dubai, they're going to be fine. They were making bank off of overvalued tech stocks the last 4 years, guys. And here we are. And now the karma police are here to serve them a warrant. They were buying overvalued cryptocurrency and tech stocks, and they made a ton of money. Forget the GameStop. Forget all those. I'm talking about the Mag 7, the Apple, the Alphabet, which is Google, Meta, Facebook, obviously, etc. NVIDIA's on there. Yes, these are your 1%ers. These are the people who are upset. But that article, and there's no paywall there. At least I was able to get through it, from the Wall Street Journal or New York Times, I can't remember, regarding all the people belly aching, all the boomers that are belly aching because their portfolio had a 10% dip in value for 3 days, and they're backing out of $6 million and $10 million houses in the Hamptons or Bel Air. You know what? Fuck them. Seriously, fuck off. That's you're gonna waste the American people's time, but that's not a problem. That's what we call a first world problem. If you back out of a $6 million house, buddy, I'm sure that $1 million property you could buy in a comparable neighborhood and live just fine, and have, your illegal Guatemalan maids go over there, okay? And the illegal guys from Brazil that put a new roof on your house. You'll be fine fucking the system over. So if you need any more evidence, friends, that President Trump is on our side, I don't know what else you need to see. This is a Main Street revolution. Has nothing to do with Wall Street. Less than zero to do with Wall. He's not even concerned about them. He doesn't care about the market, guys. He's a very smart, he was saying this in the 80s, guys. he never thought the New York stock, the S&P 500, is an indicator of the vitality of the United States global economy. And he's right. He's been talking about this guy since 1988. I mean, none of this should be surprising. We knew what he was going to do. Janet, thanks for co-hosting. Cuervo, go ahead.
Yeah, so this is something I can actually talk about too. The I don't know if you're onto this one. I came across it a couple weeks ago, but the reason that here's what I think: the reason that these million, these high end housing, these people that can, I think they're pulling out because they have analytics that show that there's going to be a dip in the market. Okay, don't listen to me on this, right? Go look up subprime 2.0. There's people that have already been talking about this. This is what's going to cause this next round, and I hope the Trump administration is over the target on this one. Is paying attention. The Joe Biden administration, because let's take a step back. Your federal government took over the housing market through investment strategy, in the fallout of the 2008 housing market, right? Watch watch The Big Short. This is no conspiracy theory. Your federal government now is the backer of 95% of all homes in the United States, meaning they own the notes, meaning they're collecting all the interest payments. Your federal government is making a killing right now off of the loans that they back. Okay, so here's the kicker. Your federal government over the last 4 years has been paying the monthly payments on defaulted loans so that they don't naturally go through a foreclosure cycle. Foreclosures are part of those things that that will help keep the housing prices down. When there's a lot of foreclosure activity, those foreclosure prices set the price of the houses in the neighborhood. Okay, so that's the reality. So when your federal government pays the default notes on those default properties, they don't go through foreclosure. So here's what's going to happen if Trump administration is not careful. There's a million loans in the pipeline scheduled to go to foreclosure had the federal government not been paying off the monthly payments. And if that just comes abruptly to an end, a million mortgages are going to go on the market as a foreclosure all at the same time. It's going to make it look like, oh my God, there's this housing market depression. No, what happened is that your federal government was illegally paying off the notes. You guys, the U.S. taxpayer, was paying the default notes, preventing them from going into natural foreclosure cycles, and it's going to temporarily disrupt the housing market, I think. And I think that the trends are starting to see that, and people are starting to lower their housing prices. Look at new housing builds; they're starting to lower their prices too on new homes. Uh, Anyways, sorry for the long rant there, but there was a lot of information to unpack there.
No, no problem. And yeah, the real estate market, I think that was two different things we were talking about, Cuervo. But yes, the real estate market, whether it's a high value home or a moderate, we'll say middle class home, is going to be impacted one way or another. Now, here's the good news in all that, though. Continue to monitor the mortgage interest rate. It's been up today, like 6.8%, but we're in this paradigm right now where crude oil is about 60 to 65 bucks a barrel, at least, recently since Trump came back. And I stopped following it when Biden was there because it was so high. But if it's staying under 7%, at least that's stable. It's too high. I'd like to see mortgage interest rates you know, at minimum below 5%. 3.99 would be great. If you qualify for that, you're a good risk. But see, the problem is when people look at interest rates is that contributes to stagflation, which is what we had during Obama, because wages weren't going up, gas was high, because we had uh, issues with ISIS in the Middle East. We were coming out of the bubble of '08, etc. What was the other problems? Well, there was a lot of them, but anyway, to give you some perspective, the interest rates during Obama were very, very high for home buying, right? Uh, and oil at one point when he first got in was almost $100 a barrel. Okay, so when Trump left office, it was like in the low 50s, I believe. So anyway, just some data points there. But we want to avoid stagflation. I don't think we're going to get there because of deregulation and stuff, and the fact that there's a lot of capital, there's a lot of investment potential here in the United States right now. We didn't have that in '08, or we didn't have that in 2013, which was a bubble. Okay, 2013 was a bad year after Obama got reelected. We kind of reverted to wages freezing again, and he was not working well with the Republican Congress, and they just weren't passing legislation. They weren't doing anything for the American people, basically. So, which is not the case now. A lot of people like to shit on Mike Johnson, but if I can take a minute, it's a very underreported story. Congress is united in getting this big, beautiful bill passed, and that will have a lasting impact, and that will eradicate a lot of tariff hesitancy. Wherever, yep, good.
Yeah, and I think people didn't really see what happened, what Obama did that was really detrimental. He liked to pat himself on the back for creating jobs, but what he was creating was low paying jobs. Okay, so there was a lot of stuff, and what I actually came up for was something else, but you're talking about housing. But I'll do the Trump weave here and tie it all together. You know, I kind of come back to these things like the housing market crash of 2008. What really happened? And it kind of makes me wonder. You can go back and unwind that and really think about what happened, which was the federal takeover of the banking, housing, finance industry. Prior to 2008, you had Wall Street, mortgage-backed securities that were funding the housing market. What happened again, if you watch the Big Short, don't listen to me. They what was happening was is greed, right? And greed was wanted. They were giving loans out to people that couldn't afford them. Well, after that happened, the federal government took over the investment of mortgage-backed securities, right? They became Wall Street in that sense. And just like every other time when there's some kind of disaster, there's always some federal takeover that occurs. It's kind of crazy that even in post 2008 we're still letting this happen. Um, and the fact that now the government can control the default market is crazy to me. And it's gonna disrupt the market. They're intentionally though, right? Because who's in the best position to buy up these 1 million foreclosed loans when they go on the market? You and me? No. Smart money, right? Probably BlackRock or whoever these guys are that have a lot of liquidity that they can go in and buy this stuff up. So here's my weave, right? I want to tie this into false flags, right? If you really look at 2008 housing market, what occurred after was the federal takeover of the finance and the mortgage finance industry. Look at what's going on today. Um, Josh Shapiro's house was firebombed yesterday or over the weekend. And look at what the left is doing, right? The left is sitting here trying to gain sympathy for their party, right? And will it work? I don't know. But they're firebombing their own houses now. And just like I kind of look at this in some other past where communists, this is a communist takeover America, and communists are now firebombing their own people to gain influence and favor for their party. It's sickening. And I hope Americans will wake up and stop voting for these people. Every time you vote for a Democrat, you're really voting for communism. And I hope people are waking up to this. We don't need any more federal takeovers of any industry.
Yeah, I don't think we're going to look at a federal takeover of subprime lending markets again, Cuervo. I think that the banks will.
Hold on. They already do. They
How
already
so?
do. What is the subprime mortgage? It's people who cannot afford, you know,
Yeah, Fannie and Freddie. But isn't that guy Bill Pulte and
FHA. FHA is the biggest lender of less than credit-worthy borrowers. That is your subprime market is FHA.
Okay, but the difference is like you said, there were in '08 was a different animal because you had the federal government take kind of privatizing by putting pressure on local banks to give everybody a mortgage. That's not happening now. I mean, the FHA isn't pressuring Bank of America or Wells Fargo like they were in '08. I think
That's
there's been some layers of protectionism since then.
well, yeah, you're right because the pressure wasn't coming from. Look, the federal government backs the note. Bank of America still lends money, but who's securitizing that note is what has changed.
Yeah, but the other difference is the interest rates were much lower back then, and people were getting involved with those adjustable rate debacles. And when I say the interest rate is too high, it's because it's more of a what's the best way of putting it? It's more of a reaction to the Federal Reserve standing put. You got to remember in '08, it wasn't Greenspan, it was Bernanke there, and he was all about doing whatever Obama. See, that's the problem. I'm sorry, Bernanke and Yellen, who were the Fed chairs during the Obama years, they were the only game in town. They were making it impossible for private industry to outpace the federal government in the lending of money. Right? It became in other words, it almost like the Depression, where, excuse me, banks were not releasing capital. They were tightening up the purse when they should have been opening up the purse, right? Provided you qualified. But we'll see what happens. I think here's my final point on that, Cuervo and everybody else, is that I think right now Trump has a very good team in charge. And Doge alone is eliminating a lot of this fraud, or at least exposing it where it can't be exploited, even if we have an economic crisis, which I don't think is going to happen. So it's a very different animal than 2008, just in the investment potential in the United States right now. The fact that the middle class, for the first time in maybe since the '80s, is strengthening and getting a much better position in what happens in this country. And what you're seeing, like the whole kind of backdrop to this space I opened today was trying to get the word out, letting people know that the 1% are the ones that are not in a very good position right now, where you and I, everybody in here, is in a better position. We're going to have more purchasing power, I think, when this whole project is sewn up. Yeah, Janet.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so make sure. I just want to jump in and say, what are we supposed to do about all the corporations that are owned by Democrats, long life Democrats, that are used to be in California and other liberal states, and like the people that run like Solyndra, all these subsidized companies, because people don't understand that you and I are paying to build these huge places with wind turbines. Okay, a wind turbine people can't even afford to build them without subsidies. Okay, and they only last maybe 20 years, and they have to have oil and all this other stuff just to keep them running. And then we don't even have any place to put most of the stuff when they disassemble them, and we're still paying for it. So to me, it's funny how many people still say, "Oh, we need them, we need this, we need that," when all these companies, when it comes to their own business that they actually own and they're making a living off of, they build them all in red states. But then they put all these wind farms and all these solar panels and all this stuff to make electricity or whatever with subsidies. Okay, see, people are not thinking about the subsidies add to our taxes that we have to pay, and we don't get it back. They don't help us pay our electric bill. They don't give us any incentive to keep investing, but they just take it anyways. But if you took the subsidies away, they couldn't even afford to even start these companies. So until they get to where they can do these on their own, I don't see why we are forced to have to even pay these subsidies from these big companies. And it's funny that no one ever asks why these big companies only build or want to build when they're in the country in red states. Why don't they build them in California? Because they can't afford the regulations. So that's what, but they constantly say how horrible Texas and Oklahoma and Arkansas and these red states are to the American people, because they rip us off, they're Nazis, or whatever their comments are. When is that? And when are we going to start seeing changes in the way these people get away with these tax write-offs and using taxpayer funds to get their business and have their billions in the bank, and we get nothing for it? When do you think that's going to start? That's all I wanted to ask. Thank you.
Well, it's a good question. In regards to like the renewable energy situation, I think that now again, I'm if you want to put solar panels on your house, then go for it. I think it's actually pretty practical if you live in the southwestern part of the United States. To be honest, they're not really. I don't have any need for them here. But anyway, I don't think there are going to be subsidies much longer, Janet, for some of those. I mean, I think you brought up. Did you bring up windmills?
Yes,
Like to
windmills
generate
and
energy, or
solar.
did you?
Yeah, windmills and solar. Because in California, they closed every nuclear power plant, and then they're constantly bitching to Arizona, not in Arizona, but California closed all the nuclear power plants, and they're keeping 2 of them running just to keep the rods cool, but they won't let them transport anything through their state, and they constantly bitch and moan to Arizona for more power, and they have rolling blackouts, and summer comes, it's going to be even worse. But they constantly say they want clean energy. So I don't.
Coal. My answer to that would be coal. I think that the administration at large, the Department of Energy, Department of Interior, is pivoting into fossil fuels and coal. That executive order he signed last week for clean coal and all that and we've got so much of it, guys, is really where the energy is going to be going, the energy sector at large. So I don't think these companies are going to be seeking subsidy, because Biden would be all for it, but I don't think that Trump is going to. That's not going to be a wise allocation of our resource or investment as a country. So I think it's going to phase out, Janet. One thing that Trump has been talking about in the 10 years he's been in politics is he's very against these windmills, and I can tell you. Some of the original ones in this country were put in Cape Cod, Massachusetts, an area I know very well, because of Ted Kennedy, and he was probably on the take from these same people you're referring to. So some of the prototype windmills were in the coastal peninsula of Cape Cod, and all the problems that Trump talks about, and he does reference them, they were killing the maritime avian life there. There'd be seagull, you'd see seagull carcasses chopped up they'd fly to them. And there was some sort of sonic disruption that was affecting the whales and other marine life uh, around the Northeast Atlantic coast. So I think windmills should be scrapped. I think that they were not well thought out, and they're not really cost effective, and they don't produce a lot of energy. So I wouldn't worry about that much longer. I think the solar panel market's a little bit different, because I do think that, if you're in an area like Arizona, they make a lot of sense. Okay. Uh, they don't make a lot of sense in, I don't know, northern Maine, or Alaska, where they've got that weird pattern schedule of the sun, where it's doesn't get darker a couple months out of the year. I don't remember what their pattern is, but I remember learning that when I was young. So yes, hopefully a problem we could put in the rearview mirror, Janet. Particularly windmills. I think those are going to be quickly out of business. If you have stock in windmills, I'd sell it if it's not devalued already. I want to bring up really quick, guys, as we're navigating another week of tariff implementation, if you will. I'd like to bring up something I think is very important and not often talked about. It's ancient history, but it's relevant now. Is the comparisons being made by the detractors of what Trump's doing? The Great Depression. Okay, so Mark Levin talked about this a little bit on his show yesterday, but I think it bears repeating, and I'll try and do it in layman's terms because he's a lot smarter than me. What we're facing is not on par with what we faced during the Depression, despite what these people flipping out over their portfolios are whining about. Okay. What happened during the Depression is you had two philosophies in the White House. Okay. FDR was a socialist, so you weren't getting workable policy during this time. Also, I mentioned this earlier in another example. When things were getting rough for the American people, okay, when the stock market crashed, when there were breadlines, the federal government did not, okay, make the American economy, what was left of it, helpful or advantageous for the American people. Okay, what does that mean? Well, during a depression, it became even harder to get a mortgage. It became even harder to get financing. Many small town banks that really propelled America in the 19th century and into the early 20th century went out of business, right? We've all learned this in high school and stuff like that in history class, that the awful things that happened during the Depression. So the government did not become proactive in terms of capitalism. They became proactive with socialism. And the 1% that was left over during this time, the oligarchs of the era, they colluded with the federal government, i.e. FDR and the Democrats, because they were running the whole everything, to form these labor unions, these protectionist labor unions, really adding fuel to the Democrat Party. That became their base. Auto worker unions and the like. So the Democrat traditional stronghold unions were really born in the 1930s. Okay. So you had that issue. FDR had the philosophy that things had become too inexpensive. All right. So he wanted to create more value for American production. Anyway, he had everything ass backwards, guys. Everything. Trump is doing the opposite. And yes, he implemented tariffs because he thought he could make some money. But Trump is doing the opposite, guys. This is what he's doing. He's opening up the American markets. He's deregulating, okay? FDR overregulated during the Depression. If ever there was a time to cut regulations, it would have been in the 1930s. He wasn't doing that. He was creating more regulations. Check when the EPA was founded. It might have been during that time. And remember, at this point, the Federal Reserve was only about 15 years old, right? The Fed was only about 15 years old. So you had a lot of problems that are not problems today. We have problems from Bidenomics, but they're not related to what happened during the Depression in the 1930s. They're just not. It's two totally different scenarios, two very different eras in American history. So money became harder to get, investment became harder to get, purchasing power was not a factor for a decade. That depression should have lasted a year or two tops. It lasted a decade. Why is that? Because of socialism and because you had very inept people running uh, the American economy from 1930 to 1939, basically. Okay. Is Scott Bessent incompetent? Is Donald Trump incompetent? The answer is no, obviously. You have a totally different cast of characters who've learned from mistakes in American history that are now running the country. Tariffs are not a bad thing, friends. People don't like them because they create market uncertainty. Okay, so Wall Street doesn't like tariffs. And as you see, it's going to be very, very hard for us to divorce ourselves from China. We've become so overly reliant and dependent on China, and we shouldn't. Again, I use the rubber dog shit. Guys, go buy any item at Walmart. You're telling me that can't be made in the United States? Give me a fucking break. That argument, I hear that every day. Or you've seen the propaganda the Chinese Communist Party has put out of a bunch of like fat diabetic people frantically working in a sweatshop, you know, making garments and what have you. You've all seen that. It is somewhat funny, and I'm not even saying it's altogether untrue. I'm just saying, we so much stuff is done by robot and AI these days that we would be training a middle class to do. No, it's not about assembling widgets on a factory line, guys. It's not about making toys one screw at a time. This person on the line puts in the nut. The next person 5 feet down the line puts on the washer. The next phase of the conveyor belt is Bobby Joe from Knoxville, Tennessee, spray paints the toy car. Okay. The next 5 feet down the assembly line, uh, Bobby Sue, he took the money and ran, right? No, that's Steve Miller Band. Bobby Sue, all right, from Memphis, Tennessee, also working at this factory. She folds the cardboard and the plastic to put the toy car in. It's not like that, guys. You're talking about 1950s style. We're way advanced from that. We were, it wasn't even like that in the 80s when many of these great factories closed. We're going to be training a new middle class to fix robots and learn how to program and work with AI and troubleshoot things on conveyor belts. Mechanical skills and mental skills. Okay. Intricate work. So if you could trust an 11-year-old Chinese slave in Kwangtuk province in mainland China to do this at an Apple factory, why can't a 23-year-old college dropout from Hendersonville, Tennessee do this, who grew up helping his grandfather on the farm, who knows how to use a Phillips head screwdriver, who knows about polarity on a battery? That's my question. They might not want to do it. They might want to have a job where they could work from home, but that's not for everybody. And you know what? I don't even think that's going to be a big problem anymore, guys. Trades are coming back. Mechanical skills, they're very in vogue right now. There's a lot of money to be made. Guys, I would not be making the money I'm making now in the early 1990s. Let me give you an example. 1991, we had a recession, and my father who had a plumbing company. He had like 3 guys working for him. two of them went off and went on their own. So it was just him and another guy. So they were doing smaller work. They were both licensed master fitters and master plumbers. Okay. Plus, my father had done a 2-year tech degree when he was a teenager. He had an associate's degree. He had done all sorts of specialty combat schools in the Army. He had a good resume. Okay. Do you know what the average rate was for a guy with those credentials doing the mechanicals and new construction? $35 an hour. Okay. In 1991. And we had a beautiful house on the ocean. And we weren't rich, but we were living in a very nice area, great schools, affluent, $35 an hour. And he was happy. And we went on vacation twice a year. We had a boat. That's what he was making. My mom worked part-time. She maybe made back then, I don't know, $30,000 a year at most, but she didn't really. My father always had 2 jobs. She worked because she liked to, not because we had to. Okay. Not because she had to. Okay. I make about between 100 and 150 an hour, and I am not a fraction of the mechanic my father was. Okay. It's criminal what I make if you compare our skill sets. Okay. I'm a good businessman. I'm a fair mechanic. I'm an exceptional businessman. I'm a fair mechanic. My father was an exceptional mechanic and a very good businessman. See how, okay, times change. So we need to find our niche and direct our youth to know there is absolutely nothing wrong with not going to college. There is absolutely nothing wrong with working with your hands. I think we're at that point. I think Gen Z's getting it, guys. For every fucking moron on TikTok that makes videos of themselves playing video games or whatever, playing Xbox, I'm seeing it, guys. I'm starting to. I'm in an area that's very got a labor deficit, right? So you're seeing a lot of kids do that. A lot of young people. My own son is doing a vocational program right now. So he doesn't know what direction he wants to go yet, but he does not want to go to college. He wants to go to probably maybe a design drafting school that is I would have to pay for. I don't know, but anyway, you're starting to see that in younger Gen Z and even Gen Alpha, which is your 11 and 12-year-olds. That something to think about, guys. This all factors into what's going on because we're going to need these. We're going to need these workers because what we have is a population, the people that are not working right now, the retired people that, the perfect example are in that article up above. They have a lot of money, but they're not participating in the workforce anymore. So there's a huge gap right there we have to make up. Now, Gen Z, they don't have any money, right? Because they haven't earned it yet. They're young. They've got to earn it, right? We're all in agreement there. But I think they have a desire to work. I would say our problem is millennials were a huge problem, younger millennials in particular. They're the ones with the useless degrees. So I think that would be like your 26 to 28-year-olds, that particular demographic I really don't have any use for at all. Not all of them, but just the ones I encountered. And I exclude everybody listening to this, obviously. But the statistics prove me right. They're just not a generation that was really go-getters, right? Because they were born just after all this. They were born after NAFTA. They were born after China being allowed in the World Trade Organization in the 90s, so they don't know in America, they don't know it any different. You talk to younger millennials on here about the 1980s, when there was no Amazon, to bring me a Nintendo game. I had to save my money, my allowance money, or save my Christmas money, and I would have to drive. There was no GameStop. There was a Toys R Us about in a little town called Newington, New Hampshire. That was about 15 minutes from where we lived. Used to have to get my mom on her day off, drive me with my allowance money to go get Mike Tyson's Punch Out. And that was like a big deal. And I can't even remember how much those games were, $40 or $50, which is like $100 now. That was a huge accomplishment for me that I could save that amount of money in 1988 as a third grader, fourth grader, whatever. And being able to do that. Now it's instant gratification. Amazon, oh, look at this. Oh, I got to. So, but you talk to young people like that, they look at you like you're from a different planet. And I'm not saying we have to go or need to go back to that, but we have to find some sort of balance, guys. Brick and mortar stores being open is very important, and it's a major piece in all this. I don't want to see foreclosures. There's a couple of the last couple J.C. Penney's in the state of New Hampshire closed. That was like the place to go for back to school shopping when I was a kid, because they were everywhere. You can get all seasonal clothing there. It was affordable and it lasted. None of this cheap shit that they sell in like Target on Amazon. I'd get a winter coat out of J.C. Penney. That would last me. Well, I was a growing boy, but that would last me like 2 winters, right? The jeans I bought in around Labor Day for the school year, they would last me, even when I was growing, they would last me till the end of the year. My mother never had to go out. She'd get me like 4 pair of jeans or whatever, and they would last me the whole year. And I was constantly in the ocean, et cetera, an outdoorsy kid getting dirty. So, we got to find some sort of balance, guys, and go back to that. We got to start manufacturing shit. With American hands for American people and anybody else who wants to buy it. It's not going to be easy, but I don't know if easy is really part of the calculus right now. It's about we've got this one last shot to change course, and if it doesn't happen now, it's not going to happen. Even if J.D. Vance wins in 2028, I don't know how married he is to. He might be, because he grew up poor, so he might be a little different. But in 2028, if somebody like Josh Hawley or Ron DeSantis is president, all this is gone, guys. They don't have the middle class love that President Trump has. So it's there's a lot on the line, and we got to be tough and got to understand radical changes are needed. And there's a lot of people out there that are going to make you feel like, we're in despair. Like the tariff thing, like what's that guy, Roy Dalio, that Billy, he's out there belly aching. I'm not worried about, of course he's not worried about a reset. Well, he had like a 1A, 1B part of his conversation. 1A, well, I'm not worried about a recession, of course, because you're a fucking billionaire, asshole. Think of all the working class people what was he on CNBC or whatever, watching this program right now. You've never had problems because you've got money. And I'm not saying he didn't earn it. I'm not a hater of wealthy people. But never preference of course you're not worried about a recession because you're worth $10 billion. It's not going to make a dent in your bottom line. Just like Warren Buffett doesn't. These people are divorced from the economy. They're not really affected by what happens. So his second point was what he's more worried about is Trump is changing he's changing monetary policy globally with tariffs. Oh, you mean what are you talking about? He's giving the American people a fighting chance, and that's a fucking problem for you? These people get a very special microphone and they get a lot of leeway, friends, because they're successful people. But the problem is when you're that successful and you haven't had to worry about money your entire adult life and your entire business career has been about the accumulation of wealth, regardless of who's president. Warren Buffett is a billionaire whether Barack Obama's president or whether Donald Trump is president. It doesn't matter to him. In fact, he gets richer because he's a great investor. But these people should not be on MSM talking about because nobody can fucking relate to them. I mean, there's a few billionaires that can talk to regular people, Trump, Elon Musk, and even he's got his, even he's a little bit socially awkward, but not Trump isn't. But I mean, they should not be. You should get people. Kevin O'Leary, he could talk to he talks like a regular person. But in all honesty, friends, you need to see more of the CEOs of these manufacturing companies that if you go on, Janet, 1 second, I'm sorry. If you go on Rapid Response on here, they do a very good job of posting those CEOs of those American-based like steel and aluminum companies or even the dumbass who's UAW, John Fain. Because at least when people see auto workers or steel plant manufacturing CEOs, they're seeing them out on the plant talking to their workers. That's what this reset is about, guys. They should not be having Wall Street billionaires on Fox Business or CNBC or opining about the economy because all they're worried about is that their tens of billions don't become single-digit billions. It's not relatable, and it gives people despair. Well, this guy's worth 10 billion and he's worried. I'm worth 100,000. I should be shitting my pants right now. Anyway, Janet, go ahead, please.
Yeah, I was just going to add the one thing that I seem to notice, maybe was I really didn't pay that much attention to it till like 15 years ago. I started noticing how children were not made to have chores, because when I was growing up, I had to set the table, clean off the table, take out the trash, things like that. Not to get an allowance either. It was just to be able to buy an annual at the end of the year, or a special pair of pants or some makeup or something like that from my parents. They would help us buy stuff if we did our chores and we did our homework and kept our grades up. But I'm seeing more and more parents where they just buy their kid a $900 phone when they're 12 and just give it to them, and they don't have any restrictions on them and things like that. And that's where I think we're doing our children detriment, is the fact that we're not raising our children to be responsible, make money, earn something, and then take care of it. They just toss it aside like, oh, well, I'll just get another one. And that's the attitude why I feel a lot of the problems that we have now with certain generation, younger generation, is the fact that they just expect other people to, give them what they want, to coddle them. It's give everyone a trophy instead of a kid having to earn something. And I wish we would get back to those type of things. I think that that's part of the reason why we are where we are today. That's all I wanted to add. Thank you for letting me speak.
100% agree, Janet. I really do. I'm glad what I said resonated with you, and I'm glad you brought that example up. And I think we're getting there. So I want to share this. I'm looking at a DM here. Warrior sent me this is good information about chips and stuff. I'll go to Bob 1 second. I just want to read this because Warrior, I don't think he can take a mic. But Warrior is a very successful car dealer in southeastern Florida. He sells very, very high-end vehicles. So he's got a very robust client list, and he knows a lot about the automotive industry at large. So I want to let I think this is useful for you guys to know, because we're talking about chips here. 3 chip tuners that will make a great difference in gasoline saving and or performance. Chevy Performance Tuners and Motors, Diablo Sport. Okay. Sorry, I was just looking at that really quick, Warrior, but thanks for that information. The chips are the reason I was thinking about that, Warrior, is do I have it up in the nest now? Before I go to Bob. Yeah, just take a look. NVIDIA, who's one of the Magnificent 7 tech companies, For the first time, NVIDIA's AI supercomputers will be built entirely in the U.S., working with leading manufacturing partners to design and build factories. Production has also started for NVIDIA Blackwell chips at TSMC's chip plants in Arizona. Okay, so NVIDIA, I think, I don't know if they're an American company, but I think they were founded by a Taiwanese entrepreneur. Uh, anyway, this is good news, guys. The more chips that are made here, semiconductors that are made here, how Lutnick was talking about this, we can't rely on Southeast Asia to make these things. I understand we haven't made them in a long time, since the 80s. That doesn't mean we're incapable of doing it now. Like, that's another mental roadblock you need to get out of your mind. The United States can't do these things because they haven't done them since the 1980s. Well, I haven't been on a seesaw since the 1980s, but I bet if I went to my local park, I could still know my way around a seesaw, whether somebody's on the other side or not. Like, it's like riding a bike. I haven't ridden my bike since like last summer, but it's in my garage, and if I got it out, I'm still going to know how to pedal. I didn't forget in the last 9 months how to ride a fucking bike. So the United States didn't forget how to manufacture things. I don't know why people believe that is the case. I think you're hearing from people who have never worked in manufacturing make the claim that we can't do it. I didn't know, anonymous account on X, that you knew the other 349 million people in this country so goddamn well that you could be so presumptuous to say that they're incapable of doing the things that slaves are doing in China right now, and probably Vietnam too. This needs to stop, guys. The propaganda ends when we debunk the verbiage around their arguments. It's like, why cut your fingernails? They're just going to grow back again. Like, why even just don't try, because we haven't done wide scale manufacturing. We didn't stop manufacturing, asshole, because we wanted to. It's because the globalist presidents we had sold us out to China and to a lesser extent Mexico and India. It's not because Americans woke up one day, geez, I want to leave my $80,000 a year union job in Detroit with full benefits, because I don't think I can manufacture anymore. I want to go to Seattle and work for this startup company called Starbucks. They took it away, guys. Americans didn't, there was no easing out of the manufacturing market. It was taken away virtually overnight. So I don't believe that we can't get back to that. I refuse to believe it, because their argument is not better than, like, their argument in opposition to me is not better than the one I'm making in favor of it. And we'll see shortly who's right. I'd put your money on yours truly. Bob, you had your hand up, buddy. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, Gads, you were talking about clothing. And so I dug out, and this is a true story. I'll send you guys pictures if you don't believe me. My parents bought me a winter jacket when I think I was 16. I still have it today, 40 years later. The zipper is perfect, made out of steel. The coat was made in Canada. And all the buttons are still on it. The zippers work perfectly. The company's called Dreimar, Dreimar. And I challenge anybody to buy something made in Bangladesh or wherever the hell it is now, because I remember I loved my clothing, like the shirts and the jeans you'd buy that were made in either Canada or the USA, quality stuff that would last forever. So I wear this coat when I do snow or whatever. I've washed it. Well, how many times do you wash a winter jacket over 40 years? Hundreds of times, right? Indestructible, this thing. Thinsulate, it's warm. And this is what we need to get back to: building quality stuff, making quality stuff, textiles or machines of various sorts, appliances, cars, whatever it is. And then the stuff lasts forever. If everybody's so concerned about the environment, then why are we in this throwaway world that we're in, right? And again, Gads, I got to condemn Bill Clinton and the Democrats. China will play fair. We'll allow them into the World Trade Organization. And then they hollow out manufacturing in Canada and the U.S. in favor of slave labor and substandard product, right? So a lot of that goes to the business owners, the CEOs that just skip town in the interest of more profit. There's nothing wrong with profit, but I think there's an ethic line where if your bottom line is already healthy, just stay where you are. Stay in the U.S., stay in Canada. Don't run over and offshore all your manufacturing to these places. So I think they need a bit of a scolding for that, but we'll forgive them if they repatriate it back. That's what we're asking for. That's what President Trump wants. I'm in full favor of all American businesses and Canadian businesses that fled. Repatriate yourself back. Now, in Canada, we don't have the tax advantages. We've still got a bunch of idiots up here running our government. But as far as the USA goes, yeah, it's time to come home. The charade is over. The game is over. Let's get back to our roots. Let's get back to looking after each other. And profit is important. But when you offshore things just so you can make a little bit more, is it really worth it? Is it really worth it? Ask yourself that. I say no, it's not. If I was a multi-millionaire, billionaire owning a company, I would not give a shit about an extra 5 or 10% profit because I can offshore it to China or some other country so that I can make just a little bit more, because my prices aren't going to come down. I'm just going to make more profit. So to those business owners, that's my challenge to you. Bring it back to the United States of America and keep it there, because you'll be treated fairly. You'll make lots of money. And let's take China out of the ballpark, because they rip off everything. They rip off our intellectual property. They're knockoffs on everything they do when you give them the molds. I saw that interview with Kevin O'Leary, Gads, about those floor mats, how they'll do their run of floor mats, and then they'll do the same run with the same molds as knockoffs, even put the same name on it. And what do? Right? So that business owner, how are you feeling now? Now China has fucked you royally, because they're taking your exact molds, your exact intellectual property, and they're putting your company label on it, and they're selling it for less. So there's no incentive to stay in China anymore. There's no incentive to keep this manufacturing offshore, Gads. It's time to repatriate it back to the great old United States of America. Let's employ our people. Let's create more tax revenue, and let's build quality stuff like I have. A jacket 40 years later that I still wear to this day. And this is the way we're going to succeed forward, is building quality stuff, employing Americans, employing Canadians, and saying to hell with this globalist new world order of cheap China bullshit, right? So thanks for the mic, Gads. I'll land my plane there.
You're welcome. Great. Yeah. I on that note, I don't know if Carhartt is still made in the U.S., but I have a Carhartt work coat that I bought for a construction gig I was doing in college, my last year of college. Where I was at that point one semester away, so I started working part-time in 2002, and I still have it. It's still wearable. It's a bit faded. I'm going to save that and give it to my son on his first day of his whatever job he takes, whether it's an office job or a construction job. I want him to wear that. And I kept a pair of Chippewa boots from 2003 because I wrote it with a Sharpie in there. And when it faded from sock sweat, I would put over 2003 inside the boots. He might have bigger feet than me when he's going to be a bigger guy than me, but I want him to have that and see, let him show your father did it. I went to college and I did manual labor, and I still do it now. So there's nothing wrong in that, whether he wears them or not, but I wanted to keep them so he could see all the wear and tear. And those boots and that jacket, were Warren financing a large portion of the life he enjoys today? Because they always did construction moonlight gigs, even when I was working in the office in Boston. Always. I was always hard up for money with a young family. And an expensive, I had an expensive lifestyle. Great example, Bob. We don't make shit like we used to, and we need to. And Jan, I'll go back to you. I just want to say, I think that it's going to be, I think Trump is going to make it financially impossible for the garment industry in particular. And now it looks like with the I'm going to get to that in a second, with the chip manufacturing, they're not going to be able to break even continuing to do this stuff in China and Cambodia, in Southeast Asia. It's not going to be advantageous for them. And really, since we buy the most of them, they should have factories here. So we've got, I think the markets are going to soar. When Janet's talking, I'll be listening, but I'm going to check my trading apps right now to see how the market's doing. NVIDIA announces that for the first time it will manufacture its AI supercomputers in the U.S., which I said earlier. It's $500 billion of AI infrastructure. So this deal is sweetened. If you remember, they were just investing the money in the U.S. They weren't necessarily onshoring all the chip making. Now, NVIDIA, which is a stock that's about $100, I believe, watch that go up, is now committed to basically becoming a full-blown on-continent American chip manufacturing juggernaut. That's one of the Mag 7 stocks, tech stocks. So I would follow their X account, because they're going to be, I mean, they just invested $500 billion fucking dollars into this country over a decade. A lot of jobs, guys. They have a lot of capital now to work with in this country in a business-friendly environment. Janet, you had your hand up. Please go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to add the fact that I have a Carhartt jacket that my parents bought me for riding in trail rides and rodeos, and I can still wear it, and it's in decent shape. So, we don't make things like we used to in our country. But one of the reasons why I think that we are where we are when it comes to that is because our young people don't have pride in our country. They don't say the Pledge of Allegiance. They're disrespectful to the flag. I mean, I'm still one of those people. I have a flagpole I put up in front of my house, and whenever it gets full of holes, I take it down. I fold it like I learned when I grew up on the Air Force bases, and I burn it. Okay, I try to be respectful to the flag because I have respect for our country. I have respect for our veterans. And that's what I see. I see so many young people that hate our country because they don't realize how lucky they have it, because they just don't understand what it's like to live in other countries and how they have no freedoms. They're not allowed to just say what they want on the street corner without being beat up or arrested. And until we can get our children to have pride in our country again, I just don't see us being able to achieve these goals. I'm listening to people right now on TikTok complaining about Trump being a dictator. And these are young conservative kids that I know voted for Trump. They think that these tariffs with China is because he's greedy. They don't understand how it works. And that's our fault because we didn't make our teachers teach our children in school. We just accepted whatever it was they were flopping out on front of them because we were busy with our jobs and other things. So we as parents, and now some of us are going to be grandparents, need to step up and make sure that our younger generations understand what people have sacrificed to give us the freedoms that we have today, and try to bring pride back. Because once you have pride and we become self-sufficient again, Canada and America become self-sufficient where we have our own meds, our own medicine, we can take care of our own people without other countries, because they can't bully us anymore. Because we can do it for ourselves, make our own gas, make our meds. That's one thing that really bothers me, is the fact that we have so many medications coming from China, and we've had people that mysteriously die, and finding out that some of the meds that they were sending to us had stuff in it that wasn't supposed to be there because the regulations are not as strong on them as they would be if you made it here. So we have a long way to go when it comes to that. But if we keep chugging along and put pride back in our children's hearts for our country, I think we're going to start seeing some wonderful things in our next generation. That's all I wanted to add. Thank you for letting me speak.
You're welcome. I agree. I just checked the market really quick, guys. I don't know when this NVIDIA news came out, because this is different than when they committed the money, not necessarily an onshore investment in the United States in totality. I can tell you I just took a quick peek. My steel and aluminum stocks and my lithium stocks are ripping right now. Just in the 15 minutes the market's been open. I didn't really have a chance to look at everything, but steel, lithium, ripping right now. And these stocks I invest in, these companies, some of them are as low as I bought them at like $2 or $3. These small, at like Pittsburgh-based manufacturers. Some of the ones I've had I just checked, since 2021 or so. I might have bought it like $18. This company's share is now closer to 100. And I don't really pay attention to it too much. I have been since Trump's been back in office, because of his emphasis on steel and aluminum tariffs. Okay, that's something to think about. Not financial advice, but I'm just showing you quick check of what I have. That's what's ripping right now. And one of those lithium companies I have is actually in Buenos Aires based, Argentina. They're doing really well. So I don't know if lithium's prevalent in Argentina. I assume it is. So maybe if Milei and Trump have a deal, that will be involved. Because if you see China's rolling back our access to rare earth as part of this negotiation dance we're doing with the Chinese tiger in Beijing. So look for more of that. I have up in the net something about coconut oil. I meant to DM that to somebody, but I don't want to take it down, because now that we're getting somewhat close to the summer, I want to do my annual tanning space, not just for vanity purposes, but the health it brings you and the healing it does to your skin. So you could bookmark that for another day. But Unseen One had a really great post last night, and I just read it this morning. Let me dictate it to you for those that don't have their phone in front of you. Because I'm talking about steel and aluminum briefly here. Something very similar happened in the UK recently. So let me read you his tweet in totality. This is applicable to China. So the UK government had to basically nationalize its steel industry and take over the funding of the last steel company in the UK, because China closed the plant it bought in the UK. So they bought a British steel, probably in Birmingham, home of Ozzy Osbourne and Black Sabbath. They bought and I think Def Leppard too. They bought a very famous British steel shop just for the purposes of closing it. That's how diabolical the Chinese are. Continuing. And this basically ended the steel industry in the UK, and the UK has no way to make steel now without nationalization. So the British government, the crown, had to step in and buy up the remnants of what China cannibalized and make it basically, yes, it's on British soil, but it's state controlled, federal government controlled. It's not owned by a private industry, by a millionaire or a British oligarch. All right. So let me continue, because there's a moral to this story that should not be lost on anybody listening to this. For those who don't understand, taxpayers are now paying the full cost to make steel in the UK. For all those upset about Trump's 25% tariff on steel, this was our future if Trump didn't enact the tariff. The federal government fully funding the production of steel. Now, you trust that? Well, Trump's president or J.D. Vance is president, but do you trust it if Kamala Harris is president? Fuck no. So it's not a good thing that there's a federalization of steel manufacturing, what's left of it, in England. Okay? Continuing. This is our future if we don't decouple from China. China isn't in trade for money, but for world domination. Communists and leftists are not capitalists. Okay. The reason I wanted to read you guys that is because there's a moral to that story. Your options are we continue down this path, and when we get to the point like the UK did, can you imagine the UK not making steel? I mean, the entire city of Birmingham was founded on the principle of steel and aluminum. All right, they were a metal producer through World War II. All the planes they built in World War One, the UK, and now the last of that industry, because China bought 75% of it and closed it and put everybody out of work, took all the resources and assets and money back to Beijing, and they probably got a deal because some stupid prime minister in England, probably was Tony Blair, allowed them to have exclusivity to the British market. That's what China does. Not the Chinese people. The Chinese Communist Party cannibalizes everything. They take everything and leave nothing. And then they talk you into signing a bad trade agreement. They're basically, you're paying them to fuck you, basically. You know, it's like a trick and a prostitute. Sorry, ladies, but this is, that's the relationship British Steel has with China right now. And trust me, they're not paying undervalued prices. So, does that sound like an America you want to live in? Not me. Heed that warning, guys, because that's next time some libertarian tells you in the next space that we're not set up, we can't just turn these factories back online. Okay, so why even try then? Why even bother? Like I said, why cut your fingernails then? They'll just grow back. Why shave every day? The hair's just going to come back. Why cut your hair? Why brush your teeth? They're just going to get dirty again when you eat. It's just this crybaby attitude. Trump's not even a protectionist, guys. I thought he was. He's a true capitalist, a true free market guy. But I think what happened somewhere along the line, like 1991, the word fair trade got mixed up with free trade, and they've been running on that propaganda for 35 years now. We didn't have free trade. We barely had it when NAFTA was enacted. When you have a country like the United States that has a $200+ billion trade imbalance with China, that's not free trade. Okay, that's a monopoly. And we had great tariff presidents like William McKinley and Theodore Roosevelt. They were back to back. Roosevelt took over when McKinley was assassinated. And it was such a prosperous time for this country. Nobody's alive to talk about it, obviously, but history will show you I'm correct when I tell you that. Eventually, guys, if you don't want to pay income tax, something's got to give. Your choices are you pay $3,000 for an iPhone made by an American who's not a slave, that's there on his own free will, with a middle-class job that he could be proud of. You pay $3,000 for an iPhone instead of $1,200, but there's minimal taxation, maybe no income tax. I mean, pick one, guys. You're not going to get $1,000 iPhone and no IRS. Doesn't work like that. Even Trump is not that kind of a magician, guys. We got to start making some choices. And the best thing I could do with you as a guy on the other end of your phone right now is be real with you. Let you know what reality is. I'll let other people deal with perception. I'll deal with reality. Cheap is not a noble thing, guys. Being frugal with your money is fine, but constantly searching for the cheapest solution is unacceptable. We're not a third world country. We have to lead the way by building and buying quality goods made by our own people. Otherwise, we're not going to survive, guys. You have plenty of evidence. Trump's been presenting it to you for the better part of a decade now. We can't 100% be divorced from China, not in his presidency, but we have to start taking steps in that direction. Have to. Yes, Bob. Good.
Guys, it made me think of I dabble in small engine repair, have, most of my life, but just something that interested me. But I can't fix anything anymore because the parts are such crap. The metal that it's made out of, you have to throw it away and buy new ones, right? Like a carburetor, for example. You could do rebuild kits on those all day long, clean it up, put it back in. On old equipment, it works perfectly. On the new stuff, there's nothing left of the metal. Yeah, there's nothing to fix. It's completely destroyed, right? So this is the kind of shit that's in everything. It's in our appliances, it's in our cars, it's just manifested this crap throwaway quality because you can't fix anything anymore with a repair kit, a few new seals, and you're off to the races again because the integrity of the part is still there, right? Starters for cars, the casings fall apart. You can't just fix the Bendix in the start. Like you just got to throw everything away because it's all made like shit. And we have to get away from that and get back to making stuff that is repairable, right? Sort of the right to repair, because it's been taken away from people like me that know how to fix stuff and keep it going. Sometimes I'll fix friends' lawnmowers, or someone knows somebody, hey, give Bob a call, he'll come over and fix it for you, right? Just in my spare time, just something to do. So they'll pay for the parts. If it's something old, I can fix it because it's still in great shape. The metal and the integrity is still there in the machinery. But the new stuff, I'm like, well, this is what the part's going to cost you. You might as well just buy another one because it's going to cost you more in parts than it is for me to fix it. I'll donate my time, but here's what your parts are going to cost you. So you might as well just buy a new one because they're not even repairable anymore. And this is what's happened to our society, right? So yeah, again, I'm looking forward to businesses repatriating back to the United States. Let's get the quality back, and it'll be a new trend, right? It'll be an old trend, but for our young generation, it'll be a new trend that your stuff will last, that you'll be able to repair it or hire someone for a minimal cost and repair it. And that's going to check the box of the environmentalists. So we're not filling up our landfills full of this cheaply manufactured junk, and just get back to a better way of life with our clothing, with everything that's manufactured, creating jobs for American citizens, tax revenue. This is the way forward, not Amazon, not all the shit you buy at Walmart. I haven't shopped at Walmart in over 10 years. I refuse to shop there. I don't give a shit that a bag of chips is cheaper there. I'll go, to the Italian market and buy my bread there, my local market in my area, or my local grocery store, for the things that I need to do. I support small and medium-sized businesses. And unfortunately now I'm kind of trapped into, when it comes to repairing stuff like small engine equipment, it's just remove and replace. I can't fix anything anymore. I can't take it apart, put in a few new parts and put it back together. I got to throw the shit away and buy new stuff. Or I say to the person, the parts are going to cost you this much. You might as well just buy another one, right? So just wanted to make that point so we understand what's happened, and we've gotten used to this throwaway society. That's not the way it should be. That's completely wrong. So we need to get back to that, and I think our young people will think that's pretty cool, right? That, oh, really, you can fix things, you can make stuff last. You know how much money that saves you in the long run? It saves you tons and tons of money over your lifetime, where you can fix stuff and not have to just keep throwing it away and buying another one.
Exactly. I faced that too many times. The stuff I repair is, there's a reason why a shower valve is cheaper at Lowe's than it is at the local plumbing supply houses, because what they sell to Lowe's, they sell in wholesale bulk. and a lot of the components, the spindles, might be made of plastic. Whereas if you go get the same Simmons shower valve, which is what I like, at the plumbing supply store, it's brass, real brass inside. It's heavier too. Does the same job, but one of them will break quicker. Like, you might have a metal handle on the supply house one and a plastic handle on the Lowe's one. I know everybody's household budget is different, but anyway. Threat, thank you, Bob. Great stuff. Threat, you'll be the last speaker because I'm about to my destination, buddy. Good.
Yeah, Roger that. Good morning, everyone. No, just quickly to kind of dovetail off of Bob's point. All of these leftists who are up in arms that we're taking China on head on because we want to get away from buying their super cheap crap that just all ends up in a landfill after a year. Like if to Bob's point, if we went back to building stuff of quality that lasts for years, that you can fix and repair, you don't have to replace every year, hey, that's less crap going into the landfill, or less quote unquote fake recycling that you use tons of fossil fuel energy for, and pumping toxins into the atmosphere and the environment. Like, I don't understand why. Well, I could go on a ramble. I won't, because I have very limited time, and so do you. But that's all. It's just there's all kinds of other benefits besides direct financial benefit in having stuff that lasts. There's these other things such as less garbage and waste into the environment.
Well, plus the countries that we like India and stuff, and China, Threat, they're the biggest polluters. Like, China and India are what keeps the global warming cult in business, because they have no
Did
regulations.
I lose everybody?
No, I got you. Can you hear me?
You can't hear Gads anymore, Threat?
Yeah, Threat, I think he dropped down, Janet, it looks like. Well, Threat, maybe you can hear me now, but everybody heard you fine. You were crystal clear up until your rebuttal. The point's not lost. I mean, look at China and India. They are keeping the global warming cult enterprise in business, because they actually see China and India actually really do pollute the environment, making their cheap stuff that ends up in landfills after a year, which you referred to, and I agree with. So yeah, it's a multi-tiered problem. The environmentalists should be fully on board with what Trump is doing, because we have laws in the United States. Yes, a lot of them enacted by Democrats that go over. But anyway, let Lee Zeldin take care of that. He's stripping it down. But anyway, we're not even an offender of polluting. Okay, North America doesn't pollute on the scale that Asia does. Even Mexico's not as bad. They have some laws there, right? So it's a win-win. Any environmentalist nut job that is against Trump is for pollution, and that's how you could explain it to them. Because as long as there's Chinese hegemony in the manufacturing market globally, there will be what they think is actually climate change, what they perceive as climate change, which is not, or but the straight up polluting and damage to Mother Earth being done. I mean, they started wearing masks in Beijing a long time ago, guys, not because of viral infections, but because of the fucking smog that permeates that city. Japan's been where I talked to a Japanese guy once. Yes, they're germaphobes, but they're very clean people. Like, their hygiene is always. So yes, they're germaphobes, but he said the real reason is because we get residual, since World War II, we've been getting residual. Well, they're worried about the fallout from the Hiroshima, from the fusion bombs, but also they get residual smog from mainland China and Japan. That's why if you look at like an old Japanese movie from like the 60s, they're running around in like the forerunner of 3M masks, because the air quality fucking sucks, because China just pollutes and pollutes and pollutes, right? So anyway, Janet, thank you. All the speakers, thanks a million. You guys have a wonderful day. I predict another announcement that will boost the market, and everybody will, you know, calm down about their portfolio. If you're comfortable, I would post on your X feed how your portfolio is doing. You don't have to put numbers down or anything. Just, put a chart up, see where that line is going, and maybe put a bullet point like charts going up, and then, maybe put a stock down that you invest in, like Tesla or something like that is doing well for you. It's all public information anyway. Nobody wants to get into your bag of tricks. Don't worry. I'm curious because everybody's investments are different. And without revealing too much, I just want to know how everybody's doing. It's something worth looking at. All right. You guys have a great day. Cheers. Bye-bye.
First off, let me convey to my family, friends, and supporters that now is not the time to gloat. We must remember that most of our left-leaning friends are good people who want the same things in life as we do, but simply think differently on how to get there. It is now time to be the bigger man, to extend an olive branch and unite all reasonable people of this great nation. God has blessed America, and together with President Trump, we will make America great again.